Very good morning to Canada, good afternoon to Europe, and good evening to us here in India. Before we start, we again request everyone who just joined as a participant to please put their mics on mute so that we don't have any disturbance. And all speakers, please assure that your cameras are switched on, provided that your internet connection allows for that throughout the event. If you are a participant, please do share who you are in the chat box so that we all know who is around the table today. It would make things more interactive, maybe also in the discussion that we have further down in the program. Today we have a very interesting agenda, and if I just go to this slide, you can see it's full of highlights, but of course the centermost highlight is the launch of the cluster. And this cluster is an initiative of the business support project to the EU-India policy dialogues, which is implemented by the European Business and Technology Center, who is also the secretariat of this EU-India aviation cluster. But for now, to not lose any time, I right away hand over to Mr. Paul Jensen, who's the managing director of EBTC and also the team leader of the aforementioned EU project and secretariat of this EU-India aviation cluster. Paul, over to you.
Thank you very much, Judith, and also thank you to all for joining us for this occasion, which I'm personally, and I believe a few more of us also quite excited that it's happening. Look forward to hear from all the speakers today. It's a very opportune time to launch an EU-India aviation cluster. Just yesterday, there was an EU-India summit, which highlighted and further committed to strategic partnerships, which includes transport, ICT, urbanization, security, all sectors related to aviation. And if I may quote just one sentence from some of the outcomes, it is that we are looking forward as EU and India to organize an EU-India aviation summit as soon as conditions will allow, and to build upon it by, now comes the crucial point, identifying common goals and implementing concrete measures and actions to enhance the EU-India relationship in civil aviation. And launching today, this EU-India aviation cluster is one such concrete measure. We're doing it through the business support project, which is all about collaborations between Europe and India. So that aligns quite well. And why are we thinking of this EU-India aviation cluster apart from the fact that it's a strategic partnership between EU and India? Well, because there's a clear demand for it. It's one, bringing business and business voice, business inputs to policy and regulatory creation. And it's ensuring collaborations as well among players within the same industry and who are all part of the same supply chain. And a lot of people have asked us when we reach out to them, why now? It's COVID pandemic situation and aviation is in a crisis. And our counter argument, if you will, or what we say is that maybe right now is the most opportune time to have an EU-India aviation cluster to be part of the solution of coming out of this crisis and getting back on the aviation growth path. The EU-India aviation ecosystem currently is obviously impacted by two major factors. One is the mega trends such as digitization, as well as green aviation, being an industry which strives to become more sustainable, and of course by the disruptions caused globally due to the ongoing pandemic. The panel you'll hear speak today comprises of experts of different disciplines, different geographies, and it's the perfect setup for holistic and interactive deliberation on those factors from their perspective of view. In addition, the aim is also to derive points that for us, developing this cluster, evolving this cluster, being a secretariat of this cluster will become extremely important. They will be fruitful, crucial for developing it, because ultimately the cluster must strive to compose a value add to the ecosystem in a business and industry-centric manner. So I also personally am looking for interesting suggestions as well as expectations towards the cluster by these experts. I'd like to exchange further notes with them, and we're very much looking forward to the intelligence, the discussion that you will engage in soon with Atul, will give, because this is indeed an early stage and initial phase of the cluster. And we have all the opportunity in the world to create the cluster exactly as is relevant and important to the stakeholders. So in this way, this launch is actually a practical starting point for the cluster and all its stakeholders, as well as for the current and future signatories to the cluster. The discussion will highlight the need and the value of an EU-India aviation cluster in further detail. A cluster with a focus aligned on both EU and India's targets with regards to sustainability, technology, emerging technologies, regulatory frameworks, and more. And I would like to hand over actually to Atul Suri, who is my aviation cluster colleague, if you will. He will spend a few minutes describing the cluster in a bit more detail before entering into interesting insights and discussion, as well as the official launch later on. So thank you all for being here, for being part of this panel discussion. There will be opportunity for some questions and answers, both towards the cluster as well as to the panelists at a later stage. But for now, let's have some insights, Atul, on the cluster, and then we'll hand over to Henriette Fagerman, who is the Environment Counselor at the EU delegation here and is spearheading and leading the discussion on transport and aviation in the EU-India strategic partnership, and then we'll have the panel discussion. Atul, over to you.
Yes, thank you very much. Just to introduce myself, my name is Atul Suri. I am the Secretariat for the EU-India Aviation Cluster. Actually, I'm spearheading this initiative, and I would just like to give you a short update on the cluster itself. So we have prepared a little infographic that I'm going to show you. So the mission is clear. We want to identify opportunities in the Indian aviation sector, and of course enhance bilateral and collaboration between Europe and Indian companies. So the objective here is to create a common platform for EU businesses, not only showcasing their expertise, but also address demands that are coming up in the Indian aviation sector, to clearly go into those demands and have a demand-driven approach to address new technologies, new frameworks, and new sectorial demands that are coming up. We have three key areas that we are working in. One is, of course, is the sustainability. Sustainability is also a post-COVID-19 strategy that's been highlighted by all ministries and by all governments. And of course, for India, green airports and CORSIA, the carbon offsetting reduction scheme in the aviation branch, is something very crucial that needs to be implemented. As well as infrastructure and operations. If you look at just for example, MRO, maintenance, repair and overhaul, MRO is a very, very huge cost factor for airlines, and India has not yet implemented MRO strategy, and India wants an MRO hub. It was a little bit difficult because the taxation was very high on having MRO services, but that's also one thing that we are looking on, supply chains, mobility concepts around that, in order to enhance that together with European and Indian, with European technologies and also European and Indian partnerships. If you go to smart technology, of course, you have integrated concepts that integrate air traffic control, air and landside operations, and also, of course, the design of new terminals in order to have these no SSOPs, as so to say, sanitation standard operation processes, in order to guarantee safe and secure boarding procedures and contactless operations, and therefore you need, of course, the technology for it. The goal is clear. We are here in a crisis mode, so to say. We would like to bring this cluster up in order to structure frameworks, address sectorial demands, enhance partnerships, because due to this pandemic situation that we have now, we are also in a paradigm change, as you know. The whole aviation branch is changing. We don't want to go to that old normal, but we want to bring up the aviation branch to a new normal and to implement a greener and a more sustainable way of operations. And of course, we would like to resonate with the recovery plans, and of course strengthen the position of the EU and EU aviation companies addressing demands in India. So if we go to the next slide, these are the activities planned for the cluster. Right now we are in the phase 1. We are launching the cluster with hopefully a lot of stakeholder engagement. The next step would be, after onboarding, to create a cluster work plan. What does it mean? It means that we want to create a target-based strategic framework. We want to look at global best practices and have them adopted by the industry. So in order to do that and to identify specific demands, we would like to have activities around it. Activities means knowledge sharing. So based on the insights that we are getting, we would like to have sectorial working groups to address specific demand, such as MRO, sustainability, drone technology, such as, for instance, and then have these sectorial these insights actually moved into opportunities, and to have this cluster itself to create its own dynamic. And this is an address to all of you. I mean, if I would like to receive calls and emails from all of you in order to get ideas on where to work, on what to do, in order to share the knowledge, create working groups, and bring this forward to a very self-dynamic cluster that addresses demands and the industry that in India. Thanks.
Thank you, Atul, for this very succinct overview of the cluster and its process, also the context where we stand at the moment. This is really the starting point, and we are really excited to launch it together with all of you. But for now, it is my pleasure to announce Ms. Henriette Vergemann, who is Head of Section Environment, Transport, Energy and Climate Action, as well as Urbanization at the European Union Delegation to India. So we're really happy to have Henriette here, who has been instrumental for all of us gathering here today, as this EU-India aviation is clearly a topic of priority, and the cluster, as Paul has also mentioned, strives to, in a complementary manner, add value to the ongoing efforts at both ends, EU and India. So we heard that there was an EU-India summit yesterday. So maybe, Henriette, you could also shed some light along these lines, and we'd be keen to hear what you have to say. Over to you, Henriette.
Thank you very much. Do you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So good afternoon, morning, evening, everybody. So I'm really happy to be here, first of all. And indeed, in this context, I probably come more as the transport councillor than the environment councillors, even if there's a strong interest and involvement of both these topics and many others in the sector of aviation. So indeed, as we have heard, we had an EU-India summit yesterday, and as Paul was mentioning, there was a really nice mentioning of the ambitions of both the EU and India to have an increased cooperation, collaboration on many different transport sectors. But aviation was highlighted as really one of the areas where both sides recognize that we have a lot of things in common, a lot of things that we can share, some common challenges, and we really have committed to work on these jointly as our two parts of the world. So I think that is the best possible starting point for the kicking off of this aviation cluster. And the other thing, as Paul was quoting, there's a clear mentioning in the summit statement of an EU-India aviation summit. Many of you, I think, are aware that we were planning, not only planning, but we had organized everything for an EU-India aviation summit earlier this spring, but unfortunately and obviously we had to cancel that in the current situation. We all had other things to do, and we all couldn't go anywhere. So this was a real pity, but as was stated, both sides are really committed to have this summit as soon as possible, when the opportunity or when the timing is convenient. We are also very much aware that the aviation sector is among those who have suffered the most from the current situation, and we want to make sure that there is enough time for the sector to recover and to be back on its feet or wings, as it were, before we have the summit. So we will see when the timing becomes right, but the commitment is there at the highest possible political level, and as I have said to many people, all the organization has been done, so it will be not so difficult to kick it off once we get to the right moment. So for me personally, it's a big joy that I can be here to help launch this aviation cluster today, because it's actually my last working week in India. So I will be shifting to my new position in Indonesia from 1st of September, and before that I will have a little bit of leave. So it's my last working week, and now that I couldn't be part of the EU-India Aviation Summit, I thought at least it would be very nice if we can launch this cluster before I leave. So I feel that maybe I have contributed a little bit to an increased collaboration between the EU and India on aviation. So thank you very much for making it happen in my kind of swan song. So just to come back to the idea of the EU-India Aviation Summit. So it was an idea that we had been floating for quite some time. It took some time to get it organized, and therefore it was indeed a pity that it got postponed. But nonetheless, the idea with that was, as I said, that there was a feeling on both sides that there's really a lot that the EU and India share in terms of opportunities, challenges, etc. in the aviation sector. And I'm not only talking about obviously flying from one place to the other, but the whole sector that is surrounding the aviation industry. So there was a feeling that there was a lot we could achieve together. There's a lot we can. There was the summit was supposed to include and will include, when it takes place, both more political discussions on how to deal with aviation policies, how to really handle the sector, not only between the EU and India, and in India and in the EU, but really in a global context. How can we work together to streamline, to affect the sector in the way that we were planning, or that we are thinking of. So the policy, the regulatory aspects, we were going to discuss about that. We were going to have certain regulatory cooperation agreements signed, and then of course all of this is very much also a vehicle for our businesses on both sides to work closely together. So aviation sector cluster businesses in India and in the EU, we feel that there's a lot that could be shared and could be done together, and that we could really kick off some kind of a fruitful collaboration. So the idea was to have this business component as part of the aviation summit, and then really kick off the cluster to work after that. Now we are in another situation. We are kicking off the cluster before the summit, and in one way it's a bit like putting the cart before the horse, but on the other hand, I think that there is then a lot of very nice work that the cluster could be doing. So as we heard already, I mean, the idea is to build something together. So for those of you who are on the call, who are planning to become part of this cluster, or who has an interest in it, I would really hope that you could, help us to create this, because it has to be. I mean, it's very much a bottom-up approach. It's an approach where we want to see what kind of opportunities have you as businesses, as industry, been seeing? What kind of barriers? What could we do to overcome some of these? And how can we really shape this? And I think it will be it can be a very nice concrete and practical input then to the aviation summit when it happens, that we actually know much more in detail than we know. Of course, we know something now. We have an idea, and all of you have an idea. But at that time, we might have a more consolidated idea of what kind of challenges and opportunities the sector is actually facing, and some ideas to what we could do to address them. So, I mean, I would say this is an industry, a business cluster that we are launching, but I'm sure that some of the issues that will appear, will surface in the process, in the conversations to follow, will also be linked to policy and regulatory aspects, and don't shy away from that. I would say just, you know, maybe park it in one corner, and then we can keep it for another fora, another time. But please do keep that also in mind when you are implementing this, when you are following the conversation. And yeah, so I would just say that I'm really pleased to see that I mean, so many, both from the European and Indian side, really respected and well-placed actors have already committed and signed up to be a part of this, and I'm really looking forward to kicking this off. I think there's a lot of opportunities here, and I'm sad that I won't be here to see the full implementation, but I know that my colleagues from EASA, who is implementing our South Asia Aviation project and are working closely with India as well as the rest of the region, they are here on the call. We will hear something from them later on. My colleagues from the Commission in Brussels, from DG Move, is very much committed to continue to build this cooperation and to implement the Aviation Summit when it becomes a reality. And my successor has been selected, and I'm sure that he will also, I will at least make sure that he's fully briefed, and I'm sure he's also very motivated to steer this to a successful cooperation and something fruitful. So let me thank everybody who is here today. Thanks for the preparatory work that has been happening from many sides, and thanks for EBTC for kind of stubbornly pursuing this idea, I would say, in a positive way. I think it's something that really has a lot of benefit, and I have a lot of hopes for what it can bring. So without further ado, thank you from the side of the EU delegation to India, and I wish us a nice and fruitful discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed, Henriette, for your insights and also for your guiding words. We surely keep that in mind, and also try to use well this early start to the Aviation Summit, and then do, as you said, like try to create the maximum synergy and also impact through a business component to the bigger picture. So thank you for that. We'll surely keep you posted, and it's indeed very sad that you're going to be further away, but not, of course, out of it entirely, I believe. So we'll definitely keep you in the loop of things. Thank you again. Now I request again my colleague Atul Suri to please welcome our distinguished panel speakers and right away proceed with the moderated interaction. Atul, the floor is all yours for the next half an hour or so. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. We have a very broad spectrum of aviation industry experts here on the panel with profound experience in the sector, and I'm very delighted to have you here. I'm just doing a brief introduction of everybody. We have Mr. Nazim Zaidi. He is the former Secretary of the Ministry of Civil Aviation with a long history since the 70s in aviation, and he was active in various policies, activities on the government level in the past. Then we have Dr. Shefali Juneja. She is the representative to India on the Council of ICAO. She's the former Joint Secretary of the Ministry of Civil Aviation. And right now she works for ICAO on international corporations and bilateral service agreements, and also for new technologies as well. Then we have Mr. Simon Sheldon from the European Aviation Safety Agency. He is the cooperation manager for the regional cooperation manager for Southeast Asia or for South Asia, and he's heading the South Asia Aviation Partnership Program. And his focus is on civil aviation safety, environmental protection, capacity building, and development of corporations. Then we have his colleague, Mr. Carlos Menendez, who is also working in the same project, and he has been seconded as a national expert for Zambia and for Southeast Asia, also on the regulatory side. And then we have Mr. Vincent Gori. Mr. Vincent Gori is the Senior Vice President of Jifas. Jifas is the French Aviation Industry Association. And he has been there since 2007, contributing to represent the French aviation industry's interest on a European level and also on the international level. So, yeah, we have prepared some questions on it for Mr. Zaidi. We are going to start with you. And Mr. Zaidi, can you hear me? Mr. Zaidi? Okay. We have some preparations made for some questions, and if we look at key policy areas that can be laid in the aviation market for a greener aviation, where do you see the possibilities for EU and Indian aviation stakeholders to collaborate on a bi- or multinational level? And from your point of view, if we shape in a policy landscape in India, what can India learn from European policies? Mr. Zaidi, you have to unmute your mic, please. Okay, I think he dropped out. I would actually then move to the next speaker, Mrs. Shifani Juneja. Sorry, we need to bring him back on board. Dr. Juneja, if we look at innovation and technology approaches, by redefining energy efficiencies in travel, it's important to adapt cutting-edge technology, and this brings a lot of opportunities to the international aviation sector. And could you tell us something from ICAO's side's point of views? What are the new policies and standards to be implemented in emerging fields?
Thank you, Atul, and a very good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all. I will first of all like to thank the organizers for this very opportune launch of the India Aviation Cluster, and definitely it gives me a lot of satisfaction to be a part of it, because I was part of the initial conversations which began nearly a year back. So I would like to congratulate the EBTC team for this. Definitely, India has a very enduring relationship with the European Union, and especially in the background of the recent high-level dialogue that has taken place between the European Union and European Commission, as well as the Indian Prime Minister. I think we all agree that there is a great potential for deeper trade and investment agreements. As far as ICAO is concerned, ICAO has always embraced innovation in aviation and adopted a leadership role in this direction, and has been continuously revising and introducing new standard and recommended practices. First of all, I would like to talk about the very recent policy changes that have taken place, which open new areas for collaboration between India and the EU. Recently, we have adopted the Amendment 28 to Annex 9, which deals with facilitation. And this is with regard to standardization of information to be collected in the format of the passenger name record, which is commonly known as the PNR. So, in line with the United Nations Security Council resolution that there has to be a curb on various terrorist activities and information needs to be collected from aviation in this regard, it was considered that there has to be a lot of standardization regarding the kind of information that is collected by the various airlines, as well as there has to be exchange of this data among different countries so that it can be used for prevention of such crimes. So there is a complete uh, format for data retention, data exchanges, data depersonalization, but all this calls for elaborate framework to be drawn. I think this is a very challenging area because every member state of ICAO needs to formalize this standardization of the PNR, and therefore this is one area where it opens a huge opportunity for uh, for collaboration between EU and India, because definitely EU has already implemented to a large extent the standardization of the PNR information collection. Yet another important area that has been very recently touched upon by ICAO is regarding the cyber security. As you would know, in the 40th ICAO Assembly last year, it was reaffirmed that there is a lot of urgency in protecting the civil aviation critical infrastructure and data from cyber attacks. And therefore, in the last council session, the Cyber Security Action Plan has been approved to be implemented by all 193 member states. Now, here again, then this requires a lot of harmonization of national as well as uh, global cooperation in cybersecurity protection, as well as the interoperability of the protection measures. So clearly, there is a need for international best practices being adopted here, and this field is a very new field, and it requires a lot of coordination between the safety as well as the security plans between the government and the industry. And here again, I feel that there's a lot of opportunity for collaboration between EU and India.
Thank
Another very
you.
important scheme of ICAO has been the next generation of aviation professionals. Now, this is a kind of the uh, foundation for any aviation sector, and specifically as we foresee that the Indian aviation sector is bound to grow once the economy picks up. So we need to ensure that we do have the foundations for the next generation of aviation professionals, and requires that there has to be a very uh, well laid out partnership between EU and India as far as capacity building is concerned. And here again, I would like to focus on capacity building specifically on the documentation, where we see that EU has an expertise in many areas of research and articulate documentation. So, a training of Indian professionals, whether they are the airport professionals, air navigation services professionals, security, or even regulatory professionals is an area which requires the next generation to be equipped to deal with the kind of future we are setting ourselves for in the coming times. Now, looking at the kind of challenges that are coming up in India, and I think we all know about the regional connectivity scheme that India has launched, which is called the UDAN scheme. It has tried to increase the domestic connectivity in India by linking the underserved and unserved airports. Now, it is not possible that each of these airports can be equipped by air traffic control services, and herein we would like to see that there should be collaboration for establishment of remote air traffic services. And here again, I think EU has really has a lot of experience and expertise in this area. And while India has tentatively decided that there should be a remote tower set up in Gujarat, Ahmedabad, for having a kind of a virtual control tower. But definitely, EU has implemented this very well, and this is an area which I think would be of great benefit for the URAN scheme specifically. Besides this, there is also, the challenge that we have for the unmanned aircrafts, which have the challenges because there is use has become increasingly in different areas. They have been used, and these unmanned aerial vehicles traffic management is a challenge because it has to be integrated to the national airspace. Here again, I feel that EU has done some outstanding work, and India has also developed what is known as the Digital Sky Platform. But clearly, there can be a very useful exchange of information and collaboration between the EU experts and the Indian experts in this area. Besides this, India has developed what is known as for satellite navigation, what is known as GAGAN. That is a geo-aided, geo-augmented navigation program. And similarly, Europe has got the European Geostationary Navigation Overlay Service, properly known as EGNOS. So this is developed a pan-European satellite navigation system, while India is still trying to implement Gagan. So I think this is another area where this satellite navigation system can be used for critical applications such as navigation of aircrafts. So these are few areas I feel, Atul, which are fairly new, and where I think the first steps should be taken for greater collaboration between India and the EU. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Dr. Janeja. One other question to you. ICAO has launched the CORSIA scheme to offset carbon reduction, and could you throw some light on global market-based green mechanisms of ICAO for carbon neutral growth of aviation? Briefly.
Yes, Atul, definitely. So ICAO has been working on the carbon offsetting and reduction scheme, popularly known as CORSIA. It is the flagship scheme of ICAO because it's clearly been one of the first organizations in the world to come up with a market-based scheme. And very recently in ICAO Council, it has been decided that we would go ahead with the continuing CORSIA scheme, and the first phase being launched in 2021. And in spite of the problems that the airlines are facing due to COVID-19, we have thought that it is important to continue to make aviation sustainable, and therefore the scheme must go on. As far as India is concerned, I think India has been working with ICAO in implementing CORSIA, and it will join CORSIA during the mandatory phase. But as CORSIA is unfolding, what is the perception that India must prepare itself to play a very active part in the scheme, and therefore we have serious discussions going on as to how to become a party to the manufacturing of what is known as the CORSIA eligible fuels. Now, CORSIA eligible fuels are clearly of two kinds. One are the low carbon fuels, and the other are the sustainable aviation fuels. Now, regarding the sustainable aviation fuels, which is a very accepted emission mitigation measure, I think Europe has done a lot. And I think they have a lot of manufacturing at a commercial level of sustainable fuels is being presently uh, done in Europe, as many as 31 airlines, and many of them Europeans, are a part of what is known as the Sustainable Aviation Fuel Users Group, where they have agreed and committed to develop, use, and certify the sustainable aviation fuels. I also know that the European Commission has set a target for itself that by 2050, at least 40% of the commercial aviation fuel would be out of biofuels. Now, in this direction, India has very recently taken initial steps by the first biofuel flight of SpiceJet Airlines taking off and this was in the year 2018. And the biofuel was manufactured from a non-food grain food stock plant called Chatropa, which was developed by the by the Indian Institute of Energy and Petroleum in Dehradun. Now, this has, of course, not been done at a commercial level. It was just as experimental development of this alternate biofuel. But one this area is definitely an area which we cannot be ignored, and India definitely needs to get its act together for manufacturing of biofuels in a commercial way, because it is an integral part of the CORSIA scheme. And there is tremendous scope in India of developing biofuels. I think this is a very, very crucial area for cooperation between the India and the EU. And definitely we need to develop first of all a white paper as to how we can develop biofuels specifically for aviation sector. Already biofuels in India are being developed, but it's largely for the other modes of transportation. In the same area of CORSIA, it is also important that India also understands that how it can participate in the carbon markets. So, although India has got a number of schemes under the Clean Development Technology, which have been considered as eligible for the carbon markets. But however, we need to ensure that in future more such carbon markets develop in India, and which our airlines can use for offsetting the carbon emissions under CORSIA. So I think this is another area where possibly there needs to be some kind of studies, and there need to be a kind of analysis of the opportunities available in India for developing carbon markets. And this can be again a very important area where there can be a joint study group or analysis of how carbon markets have emerged in EU, and how we can follow their example. So these are some of my insights, Atul, into green aviation and environment. So these are areas which are specifically relevant to ICAO, while there are a number of other areas which I'm not touching upon, but I would just like to highlight these areas. Thank you.
Thank you very much for these insights. We heard a lot about implementing new technologies, environmental integrity in form of CORSIA, and that brings, of course, a regulatory framework with it. And having several meetings with EASA, my mind is going now, okay, is there any harmonization of regulatory frameworks in India? And my question goes to Simon Sheldon on this one, the technical regional manager for the South Asia aviation safety, aviation project. Simon, could you briefly describe the benefit of a regulatory framework for the European and Indian aviation industry if implemented in India?
Thank you, Atul, and good afternoon, everyone. So first and foremost, I'd like to echo Dr. Juneja's comments in extending my congratulations on the launch of what I hope and trust will be a successful venture, the cluster. I'll try to do your question justice as concisely as possible. So regulatory harmonization and regional integration in India, South Asia, and with the EU offer significant cost and efficiency benefits. The cost benefits to both the private and public sector were, in my view, already evident even before COVID, and I would suggest that they are now harder to ignore than ever. Regulatory harmonization helps industry, in particular airlines, through increased safety and interoperability, through lower costs in training and hiring of personnel across the wider region. It assists in turn authorities through the ability to pool their resources and share safety and security information. It generates greater cost efficiency thanks to the possibility to have mutual recognition of approvals and economies of scale. and a greater capacity to address cross-border challenges. Thirdly, it benefits passengers directly through safer travel, lower prices, and improved connectivity. It aids governments as well through its ability to enhance policy dialogue. It helps to connect regions and communities. It improves the aviation sector's contribution to tourism, trade investments, and service flows. And last but not least, it also facilitates work with international partners such as EASA through more efficient delivery, enhanced bloc-to-bloc dialogue, and the perceived political neutrality of a region working together cooperatively. Now, to bring this back to India and make it more relevant, India is already a member of the South Asia Regional Initiative, or SARI. This is a grouping of 7 South Asian states that have jointly agreed to work progressively towards the regional harmonization and integration of their civil aviation regulations. These 7 states have, this was more than 10 years ago when it was established, they independently selected EU regulations, so EASA rules, as a model for this purpose. And today, SARI's scope has grown beyond its original remit, which was airworthiness, in line with EASA's original remit. So for all 7 member states of SARI, including India, airworthiness rules are already harmonized to a great extent. Moreover, with our support in recent years, some of India's neighbors have begun to extend their use of EASA-based rules to include additional domains such as air operations and air crew, so flight crew licensing. A lot of progress has already been made, but to harness the full potential of regulatory convergence through SARI, its scope would need to be progressively extended to the full extent of EU safety regulations. And this body of harmonized rules could then form the basis for mutual recognition agreements among South Asian states, which would be very much in line with India's commitment to regional connectivity under its neighborhood first policy. So I'd like to conclude by saying that EASA, as a regionally minded partner working closely with India and its neighbors through the EU South Asia Aviation Partnership Project, is very supportive of SARI, and we've been working closely with South Asia as a region to help to contribute to its goals. So I hope I kept that as brief as time permits.
Yeah, yes, you did.
To you, Atul. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So all in all, we are looking at a common course in aviation safety, so to say, if I look at your answers. And if we look at joint or common strategies or joint efforts in order to address safety frameworks, we surely need to integrate the industry together. In regard to this, what would be the benefit of an EU and India aviation cluster? Carlos, maybe you can give me some insights.
Yeah, by all means. First of all, thank you very much for giving us the opportunity of being part of this cluster launch. We all agree that this is going to be a very good opportunity for the European Union, for the European Union industry, and also for India. And we are glad to be part of this launch. You were talking about aviation safety, and that's normally when I deliver in some kind of speeches or talks in different activities. I always like to remind everybody that our common goal, regulators, civil aviation authorities, and other aviation stakeholders, is aviation safety. This EU-India aviation cluster is a project funded by the European Union, and so is the European Union Aviation Partnership Project that we are implementing, both Simon and myself and other colleagues. And we need to remember that this is an investment. We are investing money, resources, and a lot of time in aviation safety. So we are investing all these efforts in the context of the development cooperation. And this is because the European Union neighborhood policy is an important contribution to worldwide aviation safety. And it provides opportunities for European and, in this case, Indian industry. And I'm going to walk you through how we see this type of contributions. So when we talk about technical cooperation with partner countries, our project covers 8 South Asian countries, but now we are focusing on India. We are able to increase the visibility of European aviation expertise. We are trying to contribute to aviation safety worldwide and to support the European aviation industry, and to give opportunities to bind and to make connections with Indian industry in this case. And we strongly believe that this is a key pillar of the European Union and Indian economy, and this is how we intend to develop this kind of relationships. We also think that civil aviation provides us with a very good opportunity to consolidate market growth. We are now suffering a very difficult moment. We all agree that we hope that the industry and all the sector recovers in the future, but we are going to struggle, all of us, and all those challenges are there for us to work together. A concept like the Aviation Partnership Project that we are implementing, it's proven itself to be a highly successful one, and we try to build all the activities with active involvement of industry. As Simon was mentioned before, we are focused more on the regulatory side, and our partners are the civil aviation authorities of the South Asian countries, and in this case of India. And when we organize activities, we always think about the most fruitful ones for the civil aviation authorities, but also for the aviation industry. What I mean with that is that we always try to gather all the best aviation experts from EASA, from the civil aviation authorities if they are present, and also from the industry. And when we organize regional activities like workshops or things like that, we always try to bring on board industry. We have been organizing activities and talking about the latest in developments in aviation, like cybersecurity, ATM newest developments. And I would like to highlight one activity we organized in Delhi back in November 2019. We co-organized it with the Civil Aviation Authority of India, with the GCA. It was a very tough work, but a very good one. Some of the colleagues that I'm seeing now on the screen were present at that event. And that's a very good example I would like to bring today to you, because we gathered a lot of European and Indian experts, both from the regulatory side and from the aviation industry side. And this is the type of activities we strongly believe that give very good opportunities to the industry. We were able to put together in the same room regulators from EASA, from India, and from other European aviation authorities, along with a lot of representatives from high leading technology developers of India and the European Union. And we set the scene, and then there is a lot of room for them to keep the contact and to develop strategies and further improvements. And within our project, our aviation partnership project with South Asia, we try to cover all aviation safety domains and also environment, in particular CORSIA. You were mentioning CORSIA, and we are making, this is the last year of the project, but there will be luckily a successor one in 2021. And all the objectives we have are intended to be long-term ones. We have been devoted a lot of effort and time in environmental activities, in particular CORSIA. For instance, we have had a very interesting session today with DGCA India talking about order of magnitude check, just to give you an example. And in these sessions, from time to time, we also invite the industry, the airplane operators, to share experiences and to bring together the regulators and the stakeholders. So we think that projects like this one, I'm reaching the conclusion, and you'll see why I explained everything I I was explaining, we want to make a common cause with industry. We want to reinforce safety culture at an operational and institutional level. We are able to partner with institutions, with the civil aviation authorities, and we are also able to invite the industry. So what's what we are doing? We think that these two projects can work closely together because we have the tools to have all the authorities on board, and the EU-India Aviation Cluster is going to include a lot of new and former industry representatives of the aviation sector, and we think that by liaising together and working together, we are going to find a lot of benefits. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Carlos. That was very good. Now we heard the regulatory and the regulatory side of it, and of course we need the voice of the industry. And Mr. Vincent Gorry from Jifas, the French Aerospace Industries Associations. Mr. Gorry, Jifas has been engaging in India for quite some time, and I would just like to know what's the role of Jifas in India in view of their member support.
Thanks, Atul, for inviting me. I would like to congratulate EBTC and also the Commission and the Ministry of Civil Aviation for taking the initiative of launching this cluster. So about the role of Jifas, I mean, we have approximately, 60 members of Jifas present in India out of the 400 members of Jifas. And we try to help them develop their activity, their industrial activity or MRO activity in the country. So we are very much interested in the development of the aerospace industry in India, as it's for us, India has a potential to contribute a lot to the aerospace industry, and we do manufacture parts in the country. We do have there are lots of design offices, engineering offices working in the country on future developments. And we also in the near future will manufacture food aircraft. I mean, you may be aware of the Falcon 2000 business jets, which will be manufactured in Nagpur. So definitely, we consider India as an important partner for our industry, for the European industry. I should have said at the beginning that Jifas is, of course, a member of ASD, the European Aerospace Industry Association, and that as such, if I'm being invited here today, I speak a little bit also in the name of ASD. I hope it answers to your question, Atul.
Thank you very much. Jifas, having been a catalyst for various collaborations in the Indian market itself, what kind of value addition could an EU-India cluster provide to the existing support of your stakeholder system?
We have to take into account what's happening now. That was mentioned by Dr. Shefali Juneja or Carlos or Simon. We are going through a crisis. Actually, we are going through three crises. One is a sanitary crisis, another one is economical crisis, and the third one would be maybe an environmental crisis. And we have to overcome this crisis together. Regarding the sanitary crisis, it's very important that this dialogue that you are starting, that you're supporting, helps the EU and India to find a way of resuming flights together between Europe and India, and also that we together give back trust in the flights, that people come back and fly again together. Second
can you please mute your mic, whoever is talking on the phone?
So, second crisis, the economic crisis. We have to support the global supply chain between Europe and India, and that's important that we do work on that. How do we come out of this crisis stronger and able to manufacture better aircraft? And we say the third one is about environment, and it was also mentioned before. Besides CORSIA, of course, there is, sustainable aviation fuels are very important, and there's an ambition in Europe to develop the usage of these fuels. I'm glad to learn that we can do this also with India. This is definitely an axis of cooperation. How do we make more use of these fuels? I would say also that we need to work on research, and we, in the past, the European Commission had started international cooperation programs with different countries, and I'm not aware of any cooperation programs in research with India, and we wouldn't maybe gain in doing something like in that field, because we need to develop the aircraft of the future, which will be more environmental friendly. These are a few of my ideas.
Thank you very much. Yeah, you were saying we have a crisis. Of course we do, but we have to step into a new normal, and for the new normal, I think there is a crucial need for a recovery plan in order for the industry to tackle the current crisis. In your opinion, how could European and Indian aviation industries work together on such a plan, particularly on regards to supply chains, for example?
Yeah, I mean, we before coming back to a new normal, we'll be going through a very difficult times, maybe for another 2 or 3 years, before we come back to a normal, level of flights in India or throughout the world. So it's very important at the moment to support the airlines in Europe and in India, and support the industry. We are working with we've worked with the French government for a recovery plan, and throughout Europe there were several initiatives towards airlines, and we have worked with the French government toward a recovery plan for the industry, and we are discussing with the Commission about that also. It's important, if we want to have come out of the crisis and have efficient aircraft, we need to invest a lot of time in research. And so we will be needing to develop new aircraft, and for that we will be investing a lot of money. So whatever we can do in that field between India and France and Europe will be appreciated. The supply chain is really in a very difficult situation right now. You're familiar certainly with the fact that Airbus had to reduce significantly by 40% their production rate.
Yes.
It's this kind of reduction goes down the supply chain, and so smaller companies are also, of course, affected. So any scheme which can help support the MSMEs and mid-cap companies to overcome the crisis or the lack of cash flow will be necessary. Each one of us has to do its homework in our respective countries, and if we don't do that, then we won't have the supply chain still alive when we are able to resume the full production.
Thank you very much for these insights, Mr. Gori, also from the industry perspective. Mr. Zaidi dropped out in the beginning. I think he's back now. Mr. Zaidi, are you? Okay.
Can you hear?
Mr. Zaidi, I'm still going to ask you one question due to time. Thanks for rejoining. Regarding the policy side of it, where are some key policy areas where to focus that can be laid to make aviation greener, and where can EU and Indian aviation stakeholders collaborate on a bi- and multilateral cooperation?
Atul and all the participants, I am very sorry that my internet failed at the right moment. This is unfortunate. So in any case, I have lost out a lot of time. So I will be very brief. First of all, my compliments to the EBTC and its organizers, and particularly Paul and Atul, and also to the European Commission and the entire apparatus which has organized this program. So now all of you are aware that India grew very fast in past decades in aviation. I don't need to belabor the point, and the country was expected to grow at a very fast rate right up to 2040 at the compound annual growth rate of 8 to 9%. So in this background, there was a huge challenge of environment and sustainability of aviation, and this paved the way for government and industry to stakeholders to work together. So now what I want to say is that there is a policy framework available in India in the name of National Green Aviation Policy, and this National Green Aviation Policy is in line with national and international framework, like achieving 2% fuel efficiency right up to 2050, carbon neutral growth from 2020 onwards, and various other international objectives. This National Green Aviation Policy has identified certain key areas, particularly with regard to making aviation green. And if I can very quickly, one of course relates to green infrastructure, green airports, and then second major area is greenhouse and climate change, which of course is now in the form of CORSIA. Then there is a whole set of key focus areas in terms of resource conservation, whether it is energy, whether it is waste management, land, soil, biodiversity, water management, non-conventional energy at our airports. Then there is a whole concept of airport master planning, urban planning around airport, and lastly the capacity building initiatives to train our professionals in dealing with environmental issues and sustainability. So in my view, there is a policy framework available, and I think this offers great opportunities for EU and Indian stakeholders to work together. In particular, what I note and a matter of great interest is that some of the areas that your approach paper to EU-India Aviation Cluster has identified, and some of the areas in the National Green Aviation Policy, they match a lot. So just to recapture this point, you mentioned one important area is the sustainability area, which includes green airports, which include balanced developments around airport, and so is the case with our policy framework. The second important key area you mentioned is efficiency in infrastructure and operations. Again, here there are a lot of common points where stakeholders can work together. But I would like to highlight in particular your third key area, which is the smart technologies. I think this area holds great potential in terms of introduction of innovative technologies like Internet of Things, which can have great impact on airport operations, particularly during COVID time, resource allocations in terms of physical and manpower, Internet of Things can make the entire airport operations contactless, and so is the case with artificial intelligence and big data and blockchain. So my point is that all these three key areas offer great opportunity to EU and Indian stakeholders to work together and explore. And I think your platform will bring two sides together. Then I think a lot of commonalities can be explored. That's what I think. And I also think that EU policies on aviation and Indian learning from EU policies, it also holds great promise. Particularly in Europe, there is a great emphasis on emission reduction. So is the case with our country. So the moot point is how to bring these two stakeholders together, and I think your platform is the best. You will have to organize some workshops, some seminars, and you will have to get some study done as per your plan which you have laid out. I think this holds great promise. This is what I can say from policy perspective. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Zaidi. That's what we are striving for.
Yes.
And
Yes.
yeah, due to time, I would conclude with the insights and the questions here. Thank you very, very much for all the panelists. Your insights have been very, very very, very interesting, and yeah, it will lead to a hopefully to a fruitful cooperation in the future. Yeah, giving back to my colleague Judith to move on with the next with the next topic point, with the next agenda point.
Yeah, thank you very much, Atul, for guiding this very interesting interaction and discussion. Thank you very much to all the speakers. Now proceeding further in our program, just come to the next slide, please. Right. Now we're looking forward to a brief address by Mr. Amber Dubey, who is the Joint Secretary of the Ministry of Civil Aviation. Sorry, I think there was some noise. Before joining the ministry, Mr. Dubey has held various leadership positions in the industry and was also partner and head aerospace and defense at KPMG India. So it is a particular pleasure to have you here today, Mr. Dubey, considering that your expertise is actually ranging across a wide spectrum and also spans the private and public sector. Also, our cluster that we're launching just like in a few minutes from now takes on a position where those two different forces meet and where they can catalyze business collaborations. I think that is also what our fellow speakers have just highlighted from different angles. With this brief introduction, Mr. Dubey, over to you, please.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for the kind introduction, and it's an honor and a privilege to be part of this discussion. I also see some very, very distinguished people on the panel. I also see someone whom I deeply respect, Dr. Zaidi. He just spoke before me. Incidentally, the room which you see around here, this is the same room which was graced by Dr. Zaidi in his time when he was here as a Joint Secretary. So I'm really privileged to be sitting on the same chair. Okay, see, I don't want to keep this very, very short. I don't want to make a long speech. Bureaucrats anyway very famous for making long speeches, which many times don't make much sense. Can we make this a little interactive, as in like you ask me 2-3 questions and then I try and give you short, crisp answers. Just a little disclaimer that, see, here in the government, we follow a very strict protocol that you stick to your own business and don't poke your nose into others. I have been given the honor of leading drones, which is one of the most exciting. I mean, many would disagree, but I would say that's one of the most interesting stuff that is done out of this ministry, and I'm privileged to be handling that. And we are just coming from the minister's press conference where there was a presentation on the Air India flights, on the COVID response, the what you call the Vande Bharat mission, and on drones, only 2 subjects. And drones has now reached that level where our honorable minister is holding a separate press conference just on drones. So this is one massive growth area, and I see a huge potential of Indo-European collaboration here.
especially given the fact that currently I'll be very pained, and but truth is always harsh, that a lot of our raw materials were completely dependent on a not so good neighbor that we have up north. I won't name them, but there's a lot of possibility that we want to refocus and defocus from them and see how we can generate our own raw materials, the processors, the batteries, the airframe, the motors, and the propellers. Most of these are currently, unfortunately, brought from that one country. And there's lots we can develop jointly. And as I say, in a drone, the raw materials only, the material cost only 10 to 20%, depending on the nature of the drone. Almost 70 to 90% of the value actually comes from the IP. It's what you do with that camera and what you do with that sprayer or that the spray machine which sprays fertilizers or pesticides or whatever. It's those or crop analysis and yield improvement, agriculture yield improvement. We are a poor country. Lots of people, lots of Indians are engaged in agriculture. So we see huge use cases in agriculture and beyond visual line of sight action in, say, healthcare, disaster relief. So there's lots of areas where Europe is anyway far ahead in many of these areas. And excuse me for a second. And I see huge potential there. The other area I look after is also another very, very interesting area. I'm Vice Chancellor of the Aviation University that we have in North India, in a place called Amethi. It's located right next to a flying school, one of our largest flying schools in the country. That's also, again, government-owned. And I also look at skill development and aviation education. We're trying to get in many new courses. And education is another area where there's already a collaboration happening between one of our leading business schools at IIM Bangalore and Toulouse Business School. And I foresee huge opportunities there, because I'll be very honest, we Indians really look up to Europe and what France, Germany, UK, Italy, Spain, all that you've achieved, both in commercial and military. Aerospace, there's a lot of collaboration between our space agency and the European Space Agency. So these relationships go back decades, and a lot of our military hardware and software actually comes from Europe. So in terms of education and skill development is another area where we look for a lot of collaboration. So I'm very happy that this cluster has been formed. I wish you all the very best, and let's keep talking. You're most welcome to come down to the ministry, have a cup of government-sponsored tea and biscuits. And there's lots we can chat. As I say, from talking, we can talk generates more talk, and some of that converts into real action, and ultimately revenues and top line and bottom line for all involved. Because ultimately, money makes the world go round. So let's keep talking, and I'll shut up now. And if you can throw me one or two questions related to either drones or skill development, I'll be very happy to answer that. Otherwise, this can go into a very long speech, very boring for everyone. It's late evening here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Dubey, for your encouraging and also inviting words. That's very heartening to hear. And yes, indeed, just an announcement to our participants. If you do have questions to Mr. Dubey or to any of the panelists who have conveyed their insights so far, please write your questions into the chat box. We might have time to address some of them later on or tackle them offline after the launch. Right.
Let me also apologize. I'm told a lot of people were expecting a very good-looking member of the fair gender when they heard the name Amber. Unfortunately, in this part of the woods, Amber is actually a male name. So sorry to disappoint many of our colleagues here. Yes, please. Question number one.
Okay, I was waiting for Atul to ask a question. Hello, Mr. Dubey. I'm Paul Jensen. I'm the team leader of the project, which is actually spearheading this whole EU India aviation cluster, as well as the manager of EBDC. You spoke to my colleague earlier, also Varun. But I'd really like to know, I know you're talking about drones and so forth, but what I'd really like to know, you alluded to it just now, is the value of an EU-India business cluster, because the cluster should see itself in creating value to all stakeholders within the EU-India aviation ecosystem, space, if you will, and it will also be engaging with you for sure. Yeah, there will be a lot of discussions on the cluster in terms of supply chains, aviation supply chains, in terms of emerging technologies, in terms of industry challenges with regulations or policy, and we also want to be of value to you as a bureaucrat, as part of the policy making system, so you can get inputs from the industry before you create policy. So your policy intent will also be long-lived and sustainable and long-term. So I just want to just briefly hear your what do you call it? Yeah, your perspective on this, and well, let me put it blunt. I'd like your blessing for such a cluster.
Blessings are given by Godmen, and we have thousands of those in India. So I'm not the one to give blessings. I'm too small a guy. But as I said, I'll be repeating myself. You have our fullest support. In fact, let me just put it the other way around. I need you more than you need us. Okay, and in drones, in aerospace, Europe is far ahead. You're decades ahead of us. So, but we are also the gurus and the gods of software development. The head of two very large companies, Google and Microsoft, they're sons of the soil from here. They went from here, and they did wonders there, Pichai and Nadella. So, and that's just a sample of what the talent that we have here. And I deal with them because I'm part of many WhatsApp groups. Normally, bureaucrats are not on WhatsApp groups with industry, but we have some very interesting groups with these young drone entrepreneurs. Many of these are in their 20s or early 30s, and the amount of ideas they throw on the WhatsApp group is like, and I say, wow. I mean, I'm a dinosaur, and every day I become younger of a dinosaur just by listening to them, talking to them, and just debottlenecking a little. So the more ideas we get, I mean, we can't accept, of course, all 10 out of 10 ideas, but even if we work on 3 ideas or 4 ideas and take them to fruition, it'd be fantastic. Right now, our biggest focus is a word we use is direction. The Hindi word for direction is Disha. Disha is D-I-S-H-A. Disha stands for drones for infrastructure, safety, healthcare, and agriculture. These are our 4 stated broad areas under Disha. We are trying to set up a Disha fund because many of these youngsters don't get any startup money, because startups will come only when they I mean, they're like honeybees, and good for that. They'll come in only when they see honey in the pot. So right now the pot is dry. So we are trying to set up a fund both for early stage, I mean, infants, then toddlers, and also the R&D. Many of our R&D labs in some of our top universities, they're full of some very bright people. It's just that we're a little short of funds. And right now, with our industry currently going through one of the worst phases in the last 100 years, probably, this is a global epidemic. I don't need to even explain that. Aviation and hospitality and hotel industry and tourism are one of the worst hit sectors. So we are short of funds, but we are still, I mean, I have full support from our minister, and we are trying to work with other brother ministries to see if we can get some little bit of funding from here and there and put together at least a very small fund, even if it's maybe just about how many euros here? So just about 10 million euros to begin with. Okay, both with a little bit of government money and a little bit of private sector money, and then we pump that into 50 or 60 young startups. That's the focus. And as I mentioned again, I'm being repetitive. Disha is drones for infrastructure, security, healthcare, and agriculture. So these are the 4 areas, and I see a lot of commonality between what drones and high-tech innovation in drones is doing in these 4 broad areas in Europe. And as I said, I'm nobody to give any blessings. We need you more than you need us. So you're most welcome. Come down. We'll have a cup of coffee. I can't offer you wine and champagne, the European style, but I mean, we'll get you some cheap tea. But we'll have lots of interesting conversations. Over to you.
Look forward to that. We thank you very much. And yeah, in certain areas we may be, as you put it, decades ahead. I'm not quite sure, but if that's the case, what I have learned after 15 years in India is that India is super good at skipping generations in technology development. Yeah, so look at the mobile, look at IT, the several areas where you can point to that. So holding hands here makes a lot of sense, both for Europe and for India. Carlos, I see you have a question to Mr. Dubey.
Yeah, I would like to comment on the potential topics of interest between Europe and India. Sorry, there was some background noise here. So for sure, we can have shared interest in environment and in CORSIA, but I would like to also pick up what you said about drones. We organized, as I mentioned before, a very interesting activity, a drones activity last year, and it could be interesting to think about organizing a joint one with this new cluster to bring all the technology, all the young entrepreneurs in India. You know that when we talk about drones, there are two very different worlds, the world of regulators and the world of developers. And if we are able to bring those worlds together, we can create a lot of synergies. If we are able to work together, taking advantage of your software developments, of the regulatory developments here in Europe, and we bring everything together, we will have a very good opportunity to achieve the objectives that we are looking for in this type of project. So from the APP side, maybe this year is going to be a little bit challenging because of all the situation, but maybe early next year we can organize a joint drones activity with the cluster. This is a specific offer to show some results just starting today.
Thank you very much, Carlos, for your intervention, and also Paul for your comments. And of course, Mr. Dubey, thanks a lot for your address. It's very insightful, and looking forward to many more interactions.
Can I just make a small comment? I'm sorry to button, but Carlos, muchas gracias. But why next year? I'm saying we can do next week. Why even next month? Who's seen next month, next year? The virus may even multiply even more. Next week, because thankfully we don't have to travel. I mean, much against my ministry's wishes, but we can't travel. But I mean, how much does it cost to get on a Zoom call or whichever call or a Microsoft Teams call? You bring in 5 of your top drone guys and academia, professors, thinkers, crazy guys. I bring in 5 of my crazy guys. Let's get on a call and talk. And from talk comes something good. We can do this next week. Why next year?
We are all in, and I'll take the opportunity, and we can organize something in the coming weeks. By all means, we are ready to do that, and we can do it.
That's the right spirit, I believe. So appreciate that. Without any further ado, looking at the time, I'm now turning to our next speaker, Dr. Vasudevan, who is partner in Global Sector Lead Airports at KPMG India. So Dr. Vasudevan would share his perspectives on the role of an EU-India aviation cluster, particularly focusing on opportunities that can be leveraged together in this constellation, keeping in mind that we really want to catalyze business collaboration by having now set up this cluster. Dr. Vasudevan, may I request you to please deliver your brief intervention? Thank you. Dr. Vasudevan, are you on mute? We can't hear you.
My apologies. And this is something that we always unlearn as we do webinars. And many thanks again, Judith. And I would like to thank you, Paul, and the members of EBTC for inviting KPMG to be a member of the EU-India Aviation Cluster, which I think is a great initiative and very timely. And also the opportunity given to me to share my thoughts on this launch event and the role that this cluster can play in growing the business between India and the EU. Much privileged to be part of this esteemed group. I must say, normally, in my experience, programs end with a huge applause after Mr. Ambal Dubey has spoken. And I guess he is attracted the same kind of attention on this webinar as well. He's my ex-boss, and we've had the opportunity to work together earlier in his avatar as a KPMG professional on very many interesting projects in the aviation sector. And also good to see Dr. Nazim Zaidi, who have had the privilege of working with over my long career with KPMG. And I do think that we have an interesting set of members as part of this grouping who can really make a big difference on growing this business corridor between India and EU in the aviation sector. Much needed, not just for today, but in the future as well, for creating a better world. So I'll just be very brief. I know that we're running way behind time. India will continue, in my view, to be a big market for aviation, despite the blip that we've seen Of course, the whole world has been affected almost equally by this pandemic, as many of you have observed. But I think once things fall back into normal, as the recovery process begins to come in, we will continue to grow in double digits in the future. I have no doubts about that, given the potential that this market has. We are also, as India, helped by a very strong domestic market, as many of you have seen, which is again showing a lot of green shoots now, even though capacities are way below what we were operating at a few months ago. But that's likely to change as well, and we're already seeing signs of that, largely because there still remains a very underpenetrated aviation market. And that's the silver lining for India. And I'm very confident that in the next 12 to 24 months, you're going to see growth come back much stronger than ever before. I also should point out that MOCA has done some wonderful work in this industry, especially in reforming some key policies which have been strangling growth for a few years. One of the big milestones that we saw in the last few years was the launch of the new civil aviation policy. KPMG, of course, had the privilege to work with the Ministry of Civil Aviation in drafting that policy. And we have seen a lot of positive outcomes come out of that policy. We've also seen some very interesting announcements lately by the government on rationalization of the tax structure, for example, for the aero sector. And MOCA's own vision is to see more than 1 billion passenger trips by 2040. And that was another report that was released just last year. And that actually means a 4-fold increase from 2019 levels. It just goes to show the potential of this market. And there's a lot that I think EU companies and Indian companies can do together, including the governments, by working together to make sure that everything that gets generated because of this growth in terms of business opportunity is actively leveraged on both sides. We do need about $50 billion of investment in airport infrastructure alone to meet this demand. We've already seen significant interest from private airport operators and investors in building the airport infrastructure in the last 15 years. Most recently, we did see Zurich win the prestigious Jifas project, which is going to be the second airport for the National Capital Territory. That itself is a significant development for PPP concessions in India. And they are going to be pumping in quite a bit of money over the next few years. And that's going to create its own set of opportunities for other companies to participate. And there are other PPP concessions in the pipeline, which have been announced by the Airports Authority of India, apart from their vision of redeveloping 100 more airports in order to extend connectivity to the far reaches of the country, where there's still a lot of latent demand for air traffic. And I do think, other than Zurich, many other European companies which have established their credentials as big operators in the airport space, especially Vanchi, Ferrovial, Aviation, Fraport, and others, will now start increasingly looking at India as a destination for their investments. And that's something that I think we can jointly work on to see how we can create or incubate those opportunities together. And lastly, I also want to mention that we now have open skies policies with countries beyond 5,000 kilometers from India. This was again something which came out of the National Civil Aviation Policy. And I think that remains highly unexplored or underpenetrated in terms of the opportunity. There's a lot more that can happen in that growth corridor, particularly for cargo carriers, which in any case were not hindered by this regulation earlier. But I just think with what we've been seeing in the last 6 to 8 months, there is a huge opportunity for revamping our own cargo infrastructure, rebuilding our terminals, bringing in technology, as Dr. Zaidi mentioned earlier, one of the key levers for growth in the future, and see how that part of the business can be developed significantly, because that, I think, is still a weak link in the entire aviation value chain. While we've been doing very well in terms of passenger traffic growth, as well as cargo, we still remain, I think, a very low cargo penetrated market, especially for air cargo in India, considering that the overall cargo that we're handling today is still about less than 4 million tons an annum, which is much less than what airports like Hong Kong or Memphis handle. And that just goes to show the huge potential that remains in that area as well. Now, I just want to conclude by identifying there's a lot of questions that I see coming on the chat box over the last half an hour or 45 minutes. And I just thought I'll pick some of them to highlight the opportunities which are likely to come with this kind of growth. One is clearly in the area of technology, particularly in airport operating systems. I think it's important that you companies focus on this space A lot of airports have been forced to expedite their movement on the technology curve, especially to improve customer experience. And I think it's a great space to operate in. We're already in discussions with some companies to see how we can provide some bespoke solutions for airports in India, considering the unique challenges and passenger profiles that we deal with here. Communication and navigation equipment is another big area, and we did hear about Gagan from Dr. Shefali Juneja and also Dr. Nazim Zaidi. It's a big untapped area. Unfortunately, Gagan was a flagship program of the government in 2015. It was commissioned and certified, but remains unused for the last 5 years. And I think that's a great area where we can use the potential of a satellite-based augmentation system to generate new businesses, not just for aviation, because it has far-reaching implications for other sectors as well, including disaster management, agriculture, and transport. MRO, I mentioned briefly, is a great opportunity. We do know that European companies were already in India waiting for this tax break. For example, Lufthansa was operating out of the Bangalore airport for many years. Unfortunately, they were forced to wind up their business and go back. But now I think is a good time for them to come in and explore joint ventures or maybe set up the same subsidiary again to explore the opportunity in India, given the huge fleet that we are expected to add in the next 10 to 15 years. Again, I think some new focus by the government of India on Make in India opportunities. This again is, I think, well synergized with the opportunity that manufacturing of drones throws up. Mr. Amber Dubey mentioned about it. I think it's a great space to operate in. Drones particularly can also be used in airside maintenance activities as it's being done globally and particularly in European airports. And I think that's an unexplored area in India. We should try and find a way to maybe bring those technologies in India and also get them manufactured locally. It has the potential to its own value chain. And lastly, I think simulators. I saw one point on simulators where people said this could be a potential opportunity. Yes. Again, we are in discussion with a few investors and operators who have shown interest in setting up simulators in India. And I can't see any reason why European companies cannot be part of that value chain as well. I'll stop there. And I just hope that EU also helps us in finding a vaccine or a cure for COVID. That makes life a lot easier for a lot of them. Thank you. And I hand it back to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Vasudevan, for your valuable insights and comments. Very helpful indeed. Now we need to quickly advance to the next point, and which is now also a highlight. It is the launch or the e-launch of the cluster. And since we already are a bit delayed, I think we right away jump to it, and I request all the signatories that have been interacting with us before to get ready with their documents, a pen and a smile, because we're going to take a group picture to mark this occasion. And before that, I would also request Henriette to maybe once again say a few words before she has to rush off to another commitment. Sorry for the delay, Henriette.
Thank you very much, Judith. It's no problem. I'm just a little bit tied up these days. But anyway, I have my document ready here. I don't know if anybody could see it. So I'm fully prepared to sign. And again, I mean, I'm really happy and grateful. And I mean, after hearing all the introductions from the different speakers, I'm even more excited than I was when I gave my introduction. So I'm a bit sad that I'm not going to be around to see this come into a big success, which I think it really has the potential to do. So thank you to all of those who are signing, being the pioneers and as we like to call them, co-creators of this initiative. Yeah, you have a big and important task, and I think this can be really good, and we are very grateful for you to partnering all of you on these issues. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. So just to kind of guide through this process now a bit, may I request all the signatories to first switch on their cameras, hoping that they would be visible here in the centerpiece of the screen. We have among us, and we're very glad to have so, again, Mr. Vasagori from Jifas. We have another cluster with us from Moravia, Czech Republic. It's the Moravian Aerospace cluster. So Mrs. Michaela Polkova, if you could also join us. Mr. Paul Beck, Managing Director, Plane Ground from Germany, is here. I'm very happy to have you here as a company. Then Mr. Alexander Vasilev, Chief Representative, Branch Singapore from Deutsche Flugsicherung, Germany. Then Mr. Des Wine, Managing Director, Simtech Aviation from Dublin, Ireland. Welcome to you. And Ms. Africa Abadjaz Bremegilo, Head of Aviation Services, Vertis Environment in Budapest, while she's, I believe, joining us from Spain. And maybe we also have the Hamburg Aviation Association among us to just join this gathering. If you don't have the document, you can just symbolically kind of smile into the camera to express your commitment to be part of this. This is, as we have heard today, the starting point. So the real work starts now. It's very important, and it's an inherent characteristic of the cluster that it builds up through you, with you. So we hope to have many more of you join. So spread the word. And yeah, now I think I'd ask my colleagues to maybe give some guidance if there's any issue with the cameras. Are we able to see everyone? As far as I can see from my screen, not everyone is visible, so maybe they could just change the setting. Maybe it would help if those who are that I just called upon, if they just quickly said something so that they come to the screen. Maybe that helps to kind of bring them onto the first ranking participants here.
Yeah. Hi, how are you?
Yeah.
Hello, this is Plangard, Germany speaking. Maybe I can come up to the screen. Does it?
Yes. Yeah, we can see you.
Yeah, you see it? Okay.
Judith, we don't see you, only a big JD.
Oh, yeah.
Oh.
I'm just in the back end of things, so no need to see me.
Okay.
Yes. Just try to switch on the camera as well. We can see Mr. Vasilev from DFS as well, and here we have Michaela Polkova join.
Hello, can you see me? This is Africa Bajas from Vertis. I don't know if you can see me. Yes?
Yes. I think we just have to take maybe multiple pictures in that case. So okay. If you agree, if we can take out 10 seconds per signatory and just go around the table, and you can just briefly say hi and maybe also give us a line for our future way ahead, and then we consider that as the official launch. That works for everyone, because I doubt that this composition here is representing everyone.
So call each one out individually, Judith. Africa starts. A is first.
Yeah.
This is what she signed, what I have at least, you can see.
Okay. I have signed.
There you go.
Okay, so if you see me.
Yes, we can see you.
Yes, good. So I have the document here. So I will sign on behalf of Vertis Environmental Finance. We are very happy to be part of this cluster, mainly because we are a company focused on carbon markets, and knowing that sustainability and green aviation will be one of the focus of this cluster, we will be happy to collaborate and providing our expertise, and also because of the fact that we have been working in different capacity building activities together with the EASA. We really believe that educational training and good analysis are a must in order to cooperate between the EU and India and see the benefits of these global carbon markets that are coming, especially through CORSIA. So here is my signature, the paper, and thanks again for the invitation.
Great.
Welcome.
Thank you very much. Then maybe right away move to Mr. Alexander Vasilev, who is right next to him. Yeah.
Well, good evening, everybody. Hello from Singapore. I hope everything is fine with you. TOD, CFS Aviation Services also express our interest to become partners in this aviation cluster. Congratulations for this wonderful initiative, everybody involved. We already had one or the other projects in India, mainly on air traffic flow management and similar, so the typical air traffic management and air traffic control issues. Happy to collaborate with all of you within Europe, but also within India.
Thank you very much. Happy to have you on board.
Welcome.
Right away, handing over to Mr. Paul Beck.
Yep. Paul Beck, do you hear me and can you see me probably? This is Cologne speaking from Germany, from Plane Ground Airport Consulting. Very honored. I express my appreciation to be also one of the first movers here, probably representing as Plane Ground maybe the SME companies, the small and medium and enterprise companies. But absolutely humbled to be here and have high hopes in these initiatives. And yeah, I'm going to sign. And I hope you can see it. Looking forward to make it happen.
Super.
Great. So do we.
Glad to have you on board, Paul.
Now there's Win, sorry for my pronunciation, from SimTech.
No worries at all. Good afternoon, everyone. So Des Win, so SimTech Aviation is an EASA approved ATO, and we're looking forward to getting approval from the DGCA in India with regards to our ATR 72-600 simulator and Airbus. I've signed, so we're on board, looking forward to the partnership and future growth between the two nations.
Great, thank you very much. And now quickly from Ireland to Moravia, Czech Republic, is Ms. Polkova here?
Hello everyone, Michaela Polkova speaking right now. I'm very happy to be part of the webinar. This is the expression of interest here. It's signed up here right now. This was a really beautiful and really nice idea. We are happy to be there with you.
Thank you. Great.
Thank you very much. Glad to have you on board. And finally, also again, Mr. Vassagari from Jifas. Are you still here with us?
He just left. He just left.
Right, so we take his participation as a speaker as a commitment, an expression of interest for the cluster. And once again, thank you to Jifas and also the contributions of Mr. Guri. Then another name on the list we have at the moment is Francine Schultz, Manager International Affairs, Hamburg Aviation. Ms. Schultz, are you here? Can't see you actually in the list. All right, then I believe we just open the floor once and see if we mentioned everyone. Did we forget about someone? And most happy to get you on board right now in this instant. So please raise your hand, switch on your cameras. Okay, fine. So with this, I believe we had a successful online launch, as successful as it can be with Microsoft Teams. Of course, this is, nothing can be better than an offline interaction, but we can still have a reunion at a later stage, and we believe we'll further grow the cluster. Looking forward to many more signatories and to your emails, and we'll be happy to schedule meetings with all of you one-on-one to explore the way forward. Next step is to formalize all of it more, and yeah, thanks again for everyone and for your patience. Sorry for the delay. Handing over to Paul, I believe.
Okay, thank you very much, and happy to see the launches happen now. Now the real work starts. Yeah, now our shoulders start becoming heavy, but also happy to have kicked this off. And I hope to. I mean, we will for sure be in contact with you all, and Atul will start developing the work plan in discussion with yourself. So we tackle some of the issues that have been highlighted throughout the course. There's a great number of questions that have been asked. We for sure won't be able to take all of them, but maybe because you're still here, I think we'd still like to take one or two questions, and thank you, Dr. Vasudevan, for answering already 3 or 4 of them during your intervention. But there was one more that I think you didn't touch upon, which was related to airspace and airspace enhancements and changes which can offer capacity gains, and whether during the pandemic, when capacity is not a constraint, whether we think that this would be a great opportunity to look into airspace redesign or other enhancement projects. I don't know, is that a question for you, Dr. Sedi? Would you like to take that? Or would you like to redirect it to some other panelist? Dr. Sedi, you're muted. We can't seem to hear you. Can't hear you. No, you're muted.
I think
now we can hear you.
Hello. Yeah. I think your question is very right, that there is a scope of collaboration with regard to airspace utilization. India has been trying to evolve a flexible use of airspace, and I think if my information is correct, that India has gone towards evolution of a flexible airspace. So that is one aspect that can probably be collaborated. The other area of route rationalization, so less flight time and less fuel burn, and that is another area that you can work. Dr. Vasudevan rightly mentioned there is a huge area of our satellite navigation system called which is geo-positioning system, and not only in aviation but in other areas that system can be used. And there is central air traffic flow management system. Probably there could be some areas of collaboration there. And there are various projects going on in Airport Authority of India with upper space utilization. And there are initiatives, regional initiatives, where India is leading by way of evolving a similar concept as single sky in Europe. I don't know how far that project will proceed, but you are right that there are many areas in airspace management that can be collaborated between EU and our Airport Authority of India.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Sedi. I think just one more question. There's, I think that might be you, Des Wynn from Simtech. You had a question regarding how the regional airlines would be able to cover the increase in passenger demand arising from the regional connectivity scheme. You want to pose the question yourself to the person you want to answer it? Des? Okay, then we'll move on. Simon, you had a quick question? Simon?
Yes, I wanted to respond to the comment on growing ATM capacity, if I may, so response to the other question. Yes. Just to share with you an initiative that we're launching under the EU South Asia Aviation Partnership Project, which is in line with the ICAO Asia Pacific Seamless ATM Plan, which provides overarching guidance material for the whole Asia Pacific region. On the request of India's DGCA and the other civil aviation authorities across the South Asia region, we've undertaken to help develop a South Asia specific ATM master plan, which could, in line with the ICAO Asia Pacific one, help provide focus on South Asian priorities, aid alignment between South Asian states, and the growth of the South Asia market as a whole. So that's an objective that we've committed to. We're just launching it this year. We'll be able to continue working on it under the next Aviation Partnership Project, which we're launching in early 2021. We'll be working closely in coordination with ICAO, Asia Pacific Office in Bangkok, and of course, we would welcome partnerships with industry working towards that goal. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much, Paul. If you agree, then probably we could bring the session to an end at this stage. I see that there's still a lot of questions probably in this chat box. However, will be keen and pleased to address them and get in touch with you individually if that works out, and we could
Yeah, if there are any questions on the cluster, please reach out to me. The more we interact, the better we can get. So I'm available for everybody, and I'm happy to receive questions, interactions, meetings, phone calls, and I'm very, very much looking forward to it.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Atul, and thanks, Judith. I take it as a sign to wrap up the session. And I think a very good session in terms of a lot of insights on policy point of view. Mr. Dubey highlighted, a close cooperation with the cluster and the government, which is also important. I might like to actually answer one of the questions where it's someone has raised a doubt that whether the cluster will be focusing on business side of it or only regulatory aspects. So indeed, the cluster will focus on business collaboration, and business side of it is the most important area. But to do good business, I mean, it's important to have a conducive business environment. And for that, it's very important to have collaborative governance. And the cluster will try and facilitate such collaborative governance opportunities with all the stakeholders from Europe and India. So thank you so much for all the participants for your patience. And thank you to all the speakers for joining us today. Have a safe day and have a safe week. Thank you.
Thank you all. Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Judith.
Thank you. Bye.